Hey friends! Cute Cat Hemi and I made this video about 7 steps that help stop Hemi's persistent vomiting problems. This is Hemingway, nicknamed Hemi, the not-so-average polydactyl, handsome, orange tabby, who has had medical issues that caused him to throw up quite often for many years. And this video is his story about how he got better. First, I need to tell you that I'm not a vet or a medical professional of any kind. This is a retelling of a true story and not a recommendation or guarantee that this will work for your pet. You should consult your own pet's doctor to make sure that any steps you take relative to your pet's health are safe and appropriate for your pet. If you like this video though, please hit the like button now and please subscribe to the channel for more helpful videos about raising cats. Okay, moving on. I want to tell you more about the steps I took to try to help Hemi's vomiting problem. Step 1 was changing his food type and brand. Well, as I mentioned before, little Hemi, isn't he cute here? Oh, they grew up so fast. Anyways, he was plagued for many years with persistent vomiting, and I was plagued for many years with having to clean it up. So my first step was to try to figure out what was wrong with him. And the first thing I did was change his brand of food and the food type, because he was getting dry food and wet food at the time. So I started buying different types of food, brands. But for me, changing his food alone didn't really correct the problem, and he still seemed to not be feeling well and was not himself. Every once in a while, he would throw up, and it really increased my concern about what could be happening with him. I had a feeling that the food could be the remedy, but I just wasn't sure. Eventually, it came to a point where he was vomiting all through the night, so the second step I took was to take him to the vet immediately for an appointment. Based on the information I provided during the appointment and what the vet found during the examination, the vet recommended that Hemi get a CAT scan. No pun intended. But seriously, the thought of Hemi having a CAT scan was very scary for me. And it's not a cheap procedure, but I wanted to have answers. And most importantly, I wanted to do what was best for Hemi's health. So I decided to move forward with the CAT scan. As a result of the CAT scan, Hemi was diagnosed with a peritone apericardial diaphragmatic hernia. So I know you're probably wondering, what is that? Well, it's essentially when the contents of a cat's abdomen, such as the stomach, liver, and intestines, enter the chest cavity. I was told that there's not much I could do to address this other than a very invasive, risky surgery to reposition his organs if the symptoms got worse. Apparently, this condition is a congenital anomaly, and Hemi was born with it. What's showing on your screen right now is a copy of the image that resulted from Hemi's scan, showing how the contents of his abdomen are arranged. And this is just a picture of the cutest Band-Aid that they put on Hemi's leg after they removed the IV that he had to have during the CAT scan. After the CAT scan, the doctor gave me a high-calorie prescription dietary food for Hemi to eat so he could put on some more weight, since he had been a little bit underweight due to his persistent vomiting. I noticed that on the dietary food, Hemi seemed to be doing a little better, and so we resumed his normal diet of both hard and wet food a little bit later. Unfortunately, things got bad again. Hemi continued to have issues throwing up, and one day it got really bad. He hid under the bed. He was howling and wouldn't let me touch him. Eventually, I basically had to take the mattress off the frame to get him from under the bed and brought him to an emergency hospital right away. The young ER vet seemed really fascinated with his condition and really intent on doing emergency surgery on him. In fact, she told me that if I didn't have the surgery, Hemi would be dead within 24 hours. And she told me I could go home and think about it, but if I didn't take action soon, he could die. Instead of him having to go through the surgery, I decided to take another approach and let Hemi stay at home and just try to think of a way to make him feel better without surgery. Which brings me to step 3. I switched Hemi to a wet food only diet, serving only the pate style wet food. You see, I started monitoring Hemi closely, and I noticed that when I would clean up his vomit, it would have solid pieces of hard food in it. I thought back to when he was eating the dietary wet food the vet prescribed, and his vomiting did slow down at that point. So I stopped feeding him hard food altogether to see if solely feeding him wet food would help. Doing this did actually dramatically reduce the amount of times he would throw up, and it did help him gain more weight because I think he was able to keep the food down and gain nutrients from it. But it did not stop him completely from throwing up because I think he was eating the food too quickly and getting too full too fast. So that's when I moved on to step 4, which is I started refrigerating his wet food. I even used an ice pack to keep it cool. This not only made it difficult for him to eat quickly, the food stayed fresh longer in his dish, I noticed. So he still was able to enjoy his food throughout the day, but it just slowed him down from eating it so quickly. I just purchased an ice pack like you see here, something that you would get to put in a lunchbox, and used a plastic tray and put the ice pack in the tray, which I keep in the freezer and rotate. I have 2 of them. I rotate them. When I wash one, I put the other one in the fridge and vice versa. And then I just stacked his food on top of it to keep it cool. And this worked really well, but again, it didn't stop the vomiting completely. As a result, I moved on to the 5th step, which is I added pumpkin to his wet food. And the way I discovered this is I stumbled upon some articles about how to relieve cat constipation because Hemi at the time was having some issues with constipation. He was straining and having difficulty going to the bathroom. And I did take him to the vet, and the vet did tell me that he was having some constipation issues. So I read that you can put a little bit of fiber into their food, and one of the healthy ways to do that was to add pumpkin. So I bought some organic pumpkin and added it to his food, like you see me doing here, just 2 tablespoons into half a can of wet food, and just mixed it up, and it cut down on his vomiting dramatically. Another thing I read is that you can put a tiny bit of stool softener into a cat's food to relieve constipation. So I moved on to step 6 and I started adding stool softener to his wet food. And I actually just used a tiny dose, about a teaspoon of Miralax, which is something that I got at the drugstore. It's a stool softener that humans can also take to relieve constipation. And I just sprinkle it into about half a cup of water because my understanding is it's high in potassium, and bringing too much potassium into his diet could create some other types of health issues. So once I create the mixture, I just use a teaspoon and pour either 1 or 2 teaspoons of the mixture over his wet food. And then I mix it in together with the wet food and the pumpkin. And it works really well. Hemi seems to really enjoy the food, and he does not throw up except for the occasional hairball once in a blue moon. But right now I've moved on to step 7, which is I continue to monitor his behavior and monitor his health. But, right now he's gone back to his regular, crazy, cute, photogenic self. I just plan to continue to monitor his health and if I note any problems in the future, I'll just bring him immediately to the vet so that the vet can see if there's any issues. But it's been over 3 years since I started this process, and Hemi's doing really well. He's going to be 12 years old this year. We just wanted to share his story. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this video, hit like and also hit the subscribe button now to find out about new videos from Cute Cat Hemi in the future.